are Tyrians. We are many races, several professions. We practice the arts of combat as well as healing. We have foes, and we fight them without mercy. And it's time for us to claim back what is ours. It's time for us to claim back Tyria from the terror of the Elder Dragons. We can't go on living our lives in fear. We have to fight. We have to make a stand. This is our story.
To welcome everybody to Chronicles of Tyria, a Guild Wars 2 podcast by fans for fans. This is our very first episode, so before we kind of get into the content of what we're going to talk about today and introduce you to your other hosts, I figure I'll explain a little bit about what we hope to achieve here at Chronicles of Tyria. We're going to focus a lot on the lore of Guild Wars, both Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2, how they kind of tie together, what happens in the 250-year gap between the two games. We're going to go into some fan fiction, other fan projects, interviews with some of the community members. If you guys like it, some fan mail down the road. If you guys have any questions, we can do question and answer sessions maybe down the road. And we'll also be hoping to bring in some guest hosts from our own Chronicles of Tyria community, cotforums.com. So anyway, first I figure I'll start off. I am Flair. I will be one of your hosts. Give you a little background on myself. I'm an avid gamer, also outdoorsy kind of guy, hunt, fish, archery, also a geologist, so I love rocks. Yeah. And I got into Guild Wars in about 2005 when I was currently working at GameStop around the release of Factions. So I've been playing ever since. I got involved with Chronicles of Tyria when ArenaNet kind of posted a link about them on Facebook. And I've been, part of this community since inception in about May, April. I have kind of been designated lore guy, and I use those air quotes on that.
And that's your title. You can wear it.
And that, okay, it's apparently my title, and I can wear that. I will have to make a shirt that says lore guy, and I will wear that.
It's not max level yet, but yeah.
It's not all right, well, whatever. It's like level 3 out of a 8-level title. So anyway, that's my little bit. So I will introduce you to your second host, Diint. Take it away.
Oh, well, hey there. My name is Diint, spelled with 2 I's, in case you want to recognize me on the forum or send me an email. I also joined this community back basically when Flair joined back in May, pretty close to I think it was like the day after the forums were made, because I think the forums opened up on the 17th. I joined on the 18th. Mm-hmm. I don't really have any sort of cool title like Flair does. I think I'm only here just because I'm super talkative and don't ever shut up. But I started playing Guild Wars, ironically, also back when Flair started playing Guild Wars in 2005, when Factions came out. Of course, I didn't get any cool discounts like he did because I was only 15 at the time, so I couldn't have a job. But yeah, I am 22, and I've been an avid gamer pretty much all my life, and I've really kind of gravitated toward MMOs. I'm an MMO junkie. If there was a sort of MMORPG anonymous sort of thing, I would totally have to join it, but that's a really long acronym. So, I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it for me. I mean, all I really do is just play Guild Wars.
And you're very talkative on the forums, and you're an awesome guy all around.
Oh, well, you're just making me blush now.
I do that often, don't I?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go ahead and throw it on to you, Naveen.
Okay. Well, hello. My name is Naveen. Well, that's not my real name, but that's how I go on the internets, and especially on Chronicles of Tyria. I am the founder of Chronicles of Tyria. I created the website in end of April-ish, and then ArenaNet promoted it on Facebook. And that's when everything went kabloom for me, but not in a bad way, in a good way, actually. I am a stay-at-home mommy. I have an 18-month-old son, which I love dearly. And he is also known as the spawn of Guild Wars because I met my husband on Guild Wars 1, and that was before factions, I think. Yeah. And yeah, we met in real life, got married, had a kid, and everyone.
Little monkey.
Yeah, he's a little monkey. And yeah, I'm very passionate about Guild Wars lore, and my specialty, I guess, if you could give me a title, would be exploration and New Crichton. I read New Crichton without the alphabet. That's how geeky I am. And I will be
No
your
shame.
host. Yeah. I'll be your host with Flair and Diint. That's me in a nutshell.
Yeah. So, are we gonna move on to what's been going on the site here? You want to talk about the contest?
Yeah, actually, we had a contest for a new writer on Chronicles of Tyria. We got a winner. We actually had two winners, Ali and Opera, or Mark Opera, which is actually a member on our forums also. And Ali already started posting, and she has a Sylvari character, which we will be talking about today on this podcast.
I guess, kind of to interject here, to a lot of on the not the forums, but on the main Chronicles of Tyria website, one of the main things that we're kind of doing that's different from what, at least what I've seen in other kind of Guild Wars communities, is kind of taking this whole role-playing and personal story aspect of Guild Wars 2 beyond the character creation intro where you come up with your character's, kind of background and what you play through. Because let's face it, there's only so many options you can do for one character. So a lot of people are going to have a character that's very similar to another person's character. So this is our kind of way of fleshing out that story, if they're a human, before everything they do before you get to the Battle of Shaymor, or before you go fight the Ghosts of Ascalon if you're a Char, or whatever, and to kind of give your character more character, as it were. And that's what this whole what the whole writing aspect of it is. And we're planning on, we've got currently Naveen is one of the writers, and the other two that she just mentioned. And we're encouraging other people to kind of write their own stories as well. And we have some people on our forums that are very active in doing that. So
Very active.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
very good too. I was really impressed with most of the people, actually all of them, that started the story on the forums. They're really good. Like, I mean, I'm very sorry, and this is me being a bad type leader person, but I haven't read them all because I would.
There's so many of them.
I know. There's so many of them, and I'm a busy person to start with. So, but they're the ones that I've read, especially Alucardalina's story, is very good, very interesting.
Yes,
I love.
hers is really good. I love hers. And she has been active on that story. She's already started chapter 4.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And she does multiple installments for chapters, so it's not like she's made 4 posts. It's like she has made a lot of posts to make up chapters worth in a time span of a month.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that was just my kind of little bit, so that when you hear us talking about writers, what we're actually talking about. And yet it is fan fiction, but it's kind of based in game, and hopefully at some point down the road people might want to take that in game and go with an actual role playing, which I know happens in MMOs, but not a lot of people do it. But we're kind of trying to build a community for people who want to do that. So that's a little more intro on Chronicles of Tyria, but you guys can check out the website for that and get a little more information.
And I'd also like to point out, it's good fan fiction.
Yeah.
Like it's decent fan. It's not like weird, creepy fan fiction. It's not like 50 Shades of Grey. It's,
Okay, let's not link people over there though.
Yeah, there's no. I guess I would say there's no shipping for anybody that are fanfic, kind of aficionados. As far as I know, there's not a lot of, shipping in it, and it's all kind of very story driven. And we encourage you, if you are an aspiring fan fiction writer, to kind of come out to our forums, and we're a very welcoming community.
Yep.
And we'll constructive criticism, if you would like it, we can give that to you. If not, post a story. If you decide you want to make a new character, and run with that.
And sometimes we're going to have guest posts on the main website, chroniclesoftera.com. What you can do is actually write your story in the forums, and we actually go through them. And sometimes I might contact someone from the forums to have a guest post on the main website. So there's a little bit of inside.
Well, I think I should probably start working on my story.
Yeah, don't even get me started. I am far behind everybody else.
Oh,
that's just because it's going to be that good when it's done,
Oh, of course.
You see, I have put so much effort and work into, like, I guess mentally, like in my head, I have it all planned out of like the backstory, and I have such good character development of this character. And then I started researching the Sylvari, and I'm like really tempted to just scrap my character and make my main character Sylvari.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel so bad for that, because it's like I was so adamant. I was like, I'm gonna play human. I'm gonna play a male human thief, and it's gonna be awesome, and he's gonna be the best male human thief that was ever a human male thief. And then I was like doing all of this stuff for looking up all the information on Sylvari, and it just like blew my mind. And I I don't know. I feel really bad, but I'm really wanting to play Sylvari.
I'm right there with you, Diint. I think that's why my story on the character that I based all of everything on may just turn into like a one-shot story and be done, and then I'll make a Sylvari and move on that way.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we all chose humans for some reason. I think we're all attached to humans because of Guild Wars 1, because we've all played Guild Wars 1 to begin with, So, I mean, I was so excited to play a Norn or a Char, and I still created a human.
For me, it is the complete opposite.
Yeah?
I've said this before. I do not like to play ugly characters. That may just because I am an extremely vain individual. Let's just put it that way.
But see, the Norn are
like
nice.
That. No, they're bulky, and they're huge, and they're tall, and they're freakish.
Okay.
You better watch it, then. You're going to get a lot of Norn lovers.
Yeah.
You know what? If the hate is going to hate, then you can hate on me. But I hate the Char. I hate them. Hate the Char, because they're just so barbaric.
Beasts.
And a completely different aspect that the Norn are barbaric. Like, the Norn are barbaric, but they know they're barbaric, and they kind of like embrace that, and they're like, yeah, barbarian pride, let's go fight, whatever. But the Char are just like ruthless, and they're ugly, and they all have this like weird hunchback thing, and they're all mean.
Chars are cute. They're furry.
I think it's because he doesn't like
baby Chars are
steampunk.
cute.
I think that's
The
what it
cubs?
is.
Girl.
Because that is, I mean, the Char are steampunk. Let's not walk around the subject here. They are the steampunk race for Guild Wars. Also, I mean, they have airships and cannons and things that can fight ghosts.
They have the
pretty cool.
technology.
Yeah, girl. I know that, but don't get me wrong. I love steampunk. But I don't want to play as a big hunchback cat that is shooting turrets and stuff. I don't know. It's just I love fantasy type things.
It's all about
I know the time setting. I know the technology has progressed. I know now we do have guns. Now all of this other stuff that totally makes sense because it's 250 years later. Eventually, someone's going to find some gunpowder. But for me, when I think of fantasy, yes, I know there's an ugly side of fantasy, but I am really appealed to the elegant side of fantasy. So I don't want to play as this 2 foot tall elf guy, that elf gnome goblin thing that is really, really smart, just because it's not so elegant. And I don't want to play as a 10-foot tall brute who just kind of kicks in every door that he comes across. Nor do I want to play as a puma that has bad attitude.
So basically, you want to play something pretty.
Yes, I want to play something pretty.
Hence why you want to play a Sylvari.
Or a human, because humans are pretty.
All right. Well, since we're a lore-based show, let's just say that for hating the Char for 7 years, and now I guess make it 257 years, that your deep-seated hatred for the Char, you just can't get over it because of what they did to Ascalon. And
Absolutely. If I had the opportunity to sear the crap out of them, let me do it.
Who would resurrect when?
Try to stop me. See how they like searing their whole Black Citadel. That was complete BS. And my mom died in that accident.
Okay.
Your
Let's
mom
move
must
on.
have been pretty old, because it's 250 years later, and you're still just like 20 years old. So,
22.
or however old your character is supposed to be.
Yeah, I don't
the
think
ideal, beautiful age.
Yet determined.
Okay, so we totally strayed from what I thought was going to be the perfect segue into the Sylvari when we went on to a ugly character rant. So let's kind of reel it back in here a little bit.
Yeah.
Unless there's something you guys want to talk about before we kind of jump into our little lore Sylvari session, I'd say now's the time to do it.
Okay. Well, I do have a warning for listeners. I forgot to tell you in my introduction that my first language is French. So I might not be making any sense sometimes, but that's okay.
Yeah, so that's good info, Naveen.
Just so they know, you know.
Yeah, and I think as a warning for the lore that's about to come up, we're going to give you, the lore that we know that's kind of concrete, and then towards the end of that, we're probably going to get into some speculation, some theories that we have developed. Also, I can't say that there's going to be, but we'll give you a heads up if we get closer to it. There may be spoilers for people who haven't read Ghosts of Ascalon or Edge of Destiny. Maybe not, because I think I'm the only one that read both. So maybe
I read
there
the first
won't be
one.
any. But
Lore guy.
anyway, so but if there are going to be any, we'll give you a little spoiler alert as we get closer to it.
I'm fine with there being spoilers. I like spoilers. So even though I haven't
don't.
read it, I'm totally fine.
Okay,
I
so
hate spoilers.
fine. No, we won't talk about Cade outside of the bed.
Shh. Shh.
So
Dumbledore dies.
all right. Seriously, this podcast is going to drag on for like 1 million hours and nobody's going to listen.
Yeah.
So, okay. Sylvari lore. Where do we want to start?
Let's start with what we know.
Okay, well, actually, I had a little bit of an idea here.
Okay.
Why don't we start on where, this is kind of a little conceptual stuff, but where ArenaNet came up with the idea for the Sylvari in the first place. If any of you guys know that, jump in. If not, I'll kind of run that.
I have no idea.
I don't know, and you know what? That's really bad of me because I still have that magazine that was released in 2005 or 6, I can't remember, that actually introduced the Sylvari to the Guild Wars 1 players.
Mm-hmm. I remember
should-
that one.
Yeah.
Prior to the revamp when they just kind of looked like green elves.
Yeah, and you know what? I kind of liked the old design better, but that's just me.
I think that Diint and I had this conversation a couple days ago that they weren't really anything special.
Oh, no. Absolutely.
They were green, kind of elfy looking people, and these kind of tree people outside of certain kind of Celtic folklore, which we'll get into in a little bit, here. There's really nothing like them, and at least in a fantasy game that I've ever seen.
Yeah, you're
Which
right.
is something I think ArenaNet has really kind of stepped up on, like the Char. That's a race that's really not, there's nothing similar to that in any other MMO or fantasy game that I know of. But there's similar things in other kind of fantasy games, but nothing in an MMO that I'm aware of.
Right.
So anyway, let me get into. I don't know. Some people probably know about this. After the release of Nightfall, ArenaNet was gonna make a fourth Guild Wars campaign called Guild Wars Utopia.
I did not know that.
Yes, it was an Aztec-themed kind of thing. And you know what? That's a topic for another day, which I can go into whatever I have on this. But
okay, I'm glad you killed my excitement there, because I was totally going to go on a tangent. So
yeah, so a lot of that stuff got put in Guild Wars 2. A lot of the other stuff got put into Eye of the North.
Right.
And they were developing this game when they kind of realized that a lot of the stuff that they wanted to do just couldn't be done in Guild Wars 1. The mechanics and the technology just didn't allow it. So that's when they were like, you know what? Let's do Guild Wars 2, and we'll take what we can and kind of make the end game, Eye of the North. So that was where they announced they were going to have multiple races, which they were going to have the humans, obviously. They were going to have the Norn, but I don't believe they were called the Norn at that point in time.
I wouldn't be able to tell you.
They did have creatures, though. They kind of look like the Kodan that are out there now. They were all kind of white, furry, were creatures that had like blue tattoos. And there was like a warthog and a polar bear. But, long story short, they had these characters that they were calling I believe it's pronounced the Sidhe, Sidhe, which is actually pulled directly from kind of Celtic folklore of fairies and elves and changelings and that kind of thing.
Right.
Or these kind of tree spirits. And that was the initial concept. And I think if you hunt and peck around, maybe in the Guild Wars wiki or online, you can find the concept art for the original characters. And that kind of morphed into what the Sylvari is that we currently know. Well, past the elfy people and now the tree people that they are now.
Right.
That's just a little intro of where ArenaNet kind of came up with the Sylvari as a concept for a playable race. So that's my little piece on that.
I'm actually looking at the image of the concept. It says date time 4th of January 2008. So it was released around that time, I guess. They look nothing like what we know of the Sylvari right now. They actually look very humanoid. They look very much human. The only difference is that they have green hair and green armor, and they have a tattoo. But that's about it. Like, they're very, very human.
They don't even have pointed ears.
No, they don't. They're actually very round.
And that's why I love the revamp, which I think is very interesting that they decided to, so late into the development of the game, to just scrap the whole design of the race and come up with a new one, which is practically unheard of that late into development. But I love it because it fits so well with the lore. Because how on earth were they expecting to explain this humanoid creature that was basically just a human with green hair, came from a tree? With this revamp, they are literally a plant creature. They are made of plant. I can't remember where I read it or heard it, but they don't have, Flair, you and I discussed this, they don't have any internal organs. It's all plant stuff.
Sap. They don't have blood. It's golden sap. And I believe I read somewhere that when they kind of get cut, it kind of heals over kind of barky, as opposed to where like a human would have like a scab. They kind of get like a barky thing going over that.
The first book, Ghost of Ascalon, you have the Sylvari character that's teamed up with the main character of the book. At first.
The necromancer.
Yeah, the necromancer. I can't remember her name. She gets hurt by some spiders. She gets bitten and everything. And the main character describes it as not being blood, but being like this yellowish, dark green substance. So, yeah, all of their insides is actually sap. I'm pretty sure that's sap. I mean, they don't say anywhere that it is actual sap, but from what it's
Right.
described.
I
Yeah.
believe it is described as sap. And Colleen was the name of the necromancer.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't know if she's firstborn, but I would have to check on that myself.
Although I do think it's interesting, like in regards to their insides, it's every aspect of them is actually made of plant. There is no non-plant thing on them. It's like even I think this was a video that I saw with the developer that designed the Sylvari, the new revamp of it. It's like even when it comes to like their eyebrows, it's not actual eyebrows. It's just kind of like a bunch of leaves that have formed to kind of almost resemble an eyebrow, which I find is really interesting because they look so humanoid but are completely opposite of it because of the pale tree. And I'm trying to segue here.
I saw that.
Yeah. The pale tree, kind of like made them so incredibly humanoid. And there's the theory behind that. I don't know, Flair, if you want to take it.
Sure. As you may or may not know, the story kind of behind the pale tree in the Sylvari was of this human, I believe his name is Ronan.
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 Ronan, I believe.
Right, Ronan. And unfortunately, I'm kind of blanking on his entire story, but I know I believe it was something with, he was a member of the Shining Blade, and he went to war, I think, against the Mersat, and while he was away, he kind of stumbled somewhere in, I believe it's supposed to be the Maguma jungle area, west of Krita, and he made it past a cave that was guarded by a patrol of, I believe they were described as elementals, and I think it's generally believed that they were plant elementals.
I think it was described as a plant elemental.
And if you think about the Maguma jungle from Guild Wars 1, you kind of had those thorn stalkers that were kind of the animated plants that walked around and you would fight in Guild Wars 1. So perhaps that's what they're actually referring to. And he made it through, I don't think it's described how, into this cave where he found a seed. And he came back to his village and he found out that his family, his daughters and his wife, I don't know if there's more than one, were killed by the Mersat. And he planted the seed on their graves. And it's believed, at least this is the current theory that's kind of going, is that, he stayed there, and he was joined by Ventari, the centaur, who they kind of shared this kind of friendship together, and they kind of just lived there around the pale tree, and eventually Ronan died, and Ventari did his whole scribing out the Ventari tablet. We'll get into that later. But anyway, the seed was planted on his family's graves, which people believe that because it was planted on human gravesite, that's why the Sylvari kind of were shaped after humanoid, and that's why they look so humanoid.
That would make sense.
That's what I personally believe. I think that makes the most sense.
I think, that does make sense. But has it been? I mean, I may be wrong. Has it been confirmed that the pale seed was planted on their graves, or is that part of the theory?
I'm fairly positive that it was planted on the gravesite of his family. Okay. When he returned home, and that's where where he kind of stayed and grieved, and eventually met up with Ventari, and they kind of both cared for the seed to watch it grow and all that. So yeah, and I guess since we kind of brought up Ventari, we should probably mention him. That I don't know if anybody else wants to take that.
Ventari?
Yes.
I am not very familiar with him.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I remember him from Guild Wars 1, but I mean, I know that he is the centaur that tended to the young tree. Actually, here, I do have a link, the history about the pale tree. And it does talk about Ventari. It says that the seed which sprouted the Peltry was found in a cave, just like you said, containing many others like it. Guarded by powerful plant creatures, those were the creatures that you were referring to. Over 250 years ago, Ronan, so it is Ronan, he was a shining blade warrior, took one of these seeds and placed it on the graves of this family who were killed by the Mersat. He and the centaur Ventari tended the young tree, and their attitudes and philosophy had significant influence, on its nature. In particular, the marble tablet carved by Ventari prior to his death and placed at the base of the tree forms the basis of the pale tree's philosophy.
Yeah, and that is absolutely correct. This Ventari tablet is kind of driving the culture of the Sylvari. The lessons and everything from the Ventari tablet are imparted through the Sylvari before they're born from the Pale Tree while they're in the Dream of Dreams. And when they kind of, I guess that's almost, they kind of use that as kind of their bylaws that they kind of live by.
Yeah.
And I believe that's actually one of the choices that you make as a Sylvari character. I'm not sure, but one of the racial choices is which one of Ventari's kind of principles, if you will, that you hold most dear. And, you choose one of those.
Right.
Well, when the Sylvari are in their Dream of Dreams, like before they're legitimately born, they are basically being fed all of the information that the currently living Sylvari have experienced at that point. Sort of like this weird telepathy thing before you're born concept thing. But how the Ventari tablet started basically being spoon-fed to all of the Sylvari before they were born to basically make up their code of ethics and morals was, the very first born Sylvari found the Ventari tablet and decided to use it for the other Sylvari's ethics and morals, almost as if it was a prophet, even though Ventari was nothing of a prophet. It is more of like a philosopher. But
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, and it's kind of almost their religion too. It's like very, it's this big sacred artifact, and almost all of the Sylvari hold this as like the highest order when it comes to things. But that kind of ties into the nightmare court of the Sylvari race, which is their kind of, I guess, their evil association, if you will. Like the Char have the Flame Legion, and
sort of
the
like
White
rebels.
Right, yep. Rebels, yeah. And there's the White Mantle for the humans that, they kind of worship the Mersat. And the Sons of Svanir for the Norn. And we don't really know much about the Asura, so we can't really take a guess at that. But the whole thing, while they're in the Dream of Dreams, the Sylvari, some of them kind of they have a nightmare, basically, instead of like a dream. And they embrace that and kind of become evil. But what's really interesting is their whole goal is to, quote, corrupt the Pale Tree and kind of break all the Sylvari from being tied to kind of human/Ventari's wisdom and the Ventari tablet, which it's considered evil by, quote, good Sylvari, but it's really not evil. All they want to do is kind of break them of the Ventari tablet and have them come up with a philosophy to live by that's developed by the Sylvari themselves.
Right. And it's interesting because the Nightmare Court, as ominous as that sounds, don't actually tend to be really all that evil. They're just sort of like the antithesis of what the other Sylvari are and what they stand for as far as their morals go. But not a lot of them, although there have been, according to, the wiki and other lore sites, although there have been actual evil Sylvari, a lot of the members of the Nightmare Court aren't even all that evil. They're just against the Ventari tablet.
Right, and it should, I guess, be mentioned that it's not all, obviously, like, not all Sylvari. It's about 10 to 15% or so become Nightmare Court. It was started by a Sylvari second-born, And then it's actually led now by one of the Sylvari Firstborn, who wasn't Nightmare Court and then defected to that after finding out their ideals.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, and it's actually, spoiler alert for people that haven't read
Skip.
Destiny's Edge. It's Cade, the one Sylvari. It's her lover, actually.
Oh.
It was her lover, and she became one of the Nightmare Court, and is now the Grand Duchess of the Nightmare Court. There's not much other stuff we know about the Nightmare Court other than you can get a tonic thing that transforms you into one from a box of fun, which is kind of cool. We spent a lot of good times with that in Beta Weekend number 2.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also probably loosely based on the Unseelie Court, which is a kind of ties back into that Celtic folklore we discussed earlier. It's kind of the darker side of like dark fae creatures in Celtic lore. So it's probably where that was kind of based on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's like I said, it's interesting because they're not evil per se, but they're considered evil and almost perverse in relation to the quote good dream Sylvari, I guess if you want to call them that, the non-Nightmare Court. It's like I said, it's a lot different than like the Sons of Spanir or the Flame Legion, which are clearly evil. Some of them corrupted from a dragon, others just living under false gods.
Right.
So that's my little piece, and I guess our piece on the Nightmare Court, unless you guys have anything that you would like to add to it.
Not really, because I didn't know much about the Nightmare Court. I guess I'm learning as you go because that's why you're here. You're the lore master. No, guy. You're
Lore
not
guide.
master yet.
I don't want to be master. Too much. Pressure.
Too much pressure.
Yeah.
No, and speaking of all Sylvaris, like, even if they're not from the Nightmare Court, even they're nice, per se, it's interesting to know that they are only, 25 years old?
Yes. Prior to Guild Wars 2, 25 years prior to the events we start in Guild Wars 2, the Sylvari Firstborn were born from the Pale Tree. There were 7 of them. I believe some of them have perished from fighting. What's kind of interesting is they lived in the Tarnished Coast near the Asura, and the Asura there was only a few of them, and the Asura just assumed that they were this kind of plant creature, and actually took them as test subjects and started experimenting on them because they assumed they were a plant. And then it was kind of found out that they were a sentient non-plant being. But ever since then, the Sylvari have been kind of reserved when it comes to, especially the Asura, but much more reserved when meeting other races, even though their curiosity drives them. They kind of have this, I wouldn't say even an animosity, but they're a little wary when it comes to Asura. But, for a while, it was just the 7 Firstborn.
Right.
And then eventually the Secondborn, and as we get closer to Guild Wars 2, just multiples and multiples, hundreds, I would assume, or thousands even, of Sylvari have been born, and now it's kind of almost increasing at an exponential rate. And what's worth mentioning is when you're born as a Sylvari, you are born as a full-grown adult. You're not, they don't have a weird child stage because they're educated on all of the kind of upbringing of, like how to write and how to read and, how to talk and walk and wield a sword, all in the Dream of Dreams. And while they know how to do it, they've never actually experienced it. And that kind of drives them as this whole curiosity thing. And, as we see in some of the books and some of the, the lore, that they don't have any tact, and they really don't understand like senses of humor and like, oh, you didn't want me to animate your friend who just died as a bone minion?
Yeah, why not?
I'm sorry, I don't understand that.
Yeah. Basically, they're children. They're still children, but in adult type bodies.
Yeah.
Before you were mentioning the 7 Firstborn, I was under the impression that there were 12.
Maybe it is 12. Because if you scroll down there, and the page I'm assuming you're looking at, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 listed. And we don't know a ton about all of the Firstborn. We know, obviously, about Cade, because she's the main Sylvari you're going to be interacting with if you become a Sylvari.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the former members of Destiny's Edge. And I don't know how you pronounce it. I'm going to go with Faolain, but that could be butchered by me. It was when I mentioned the Grand Duchess of the Nightmare Court.
Right.
And then, we know a little bit about some of them. We know Ryanok was the first Sylvari to die, which is actually something we'll kind of segue into that for a little bit.
Right.
As they're only 25 years old. We don't know if Sylvari die of old age. They're only 25 years old.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you think about it, the new ones that you make as a player character look no different than the Firstborn, who are 25 years old. So that brings up do they age? Do they just one day drop dead? And you don't, when they reach that age? Or do they, they age like a tree? Slowly, and they kind of get kind of grayish and lichen covered like a tree does.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know, so that's totally up in the air, and we probably won't know for a while. Well, that's an interesting little piece about the Sylvari, age-wise.
Do they ever get sick? Is what I'm wondering. Also,
they do actually in the demo, or I'm sorry, in the beta. If you go to that one kind of Sylvari area. That's kind of south in Kessex Hills.
Mm-hmm.
There's the swamp, and one of the kind of dynamic events is you get something to heal the sick Sylvari.
Right.
The water is corrupted or poisoned or something.
Yeah, and
I did not get to participate in that one.
Pardon me?
I said I did not get to participate in that one.
Oh, you didn't?
No,
weren't we trying to walk around and then we had to water the Sylvari?
Something like that, yeah.
Which kind of makes sense. I mean, when a plant is sick, you have to water it.
Which actually is a perfect segue into my next little piece on the Sylvari.
Uh-huh.
They do need to eat and drink actual food, like a
Like meat?
human. Like a human or a char or whatever it does. They're not photosynthetic. Standing in the sun does make them kind of feel happy and rejuvenated, but they don't have to be in the sun to kind of heal themselves, which is unfortunate as a player character, because that would be awesome if you could just stand outside and you'd automatically have regeneration.
Right.
But unfortunately, no, it doesn't work like that. So
they need to eat human food.
Well, they need to eat and drink to survive. I mean, whether they just eat berries, I'm not sure if there's any kind of lore on whether they're vegetarian, which would be kind of funny. They'd be eating themselves,
Ooh,
theoretically.
Yeah.
But yes, they do need to eat and drink to sustain their life. And I guess maybe we touch on some of the other stuff about them. Their gender is selected by the pale tree before they kind of are formed in their little golden fruit pod that comes out when they are born. Well, it's described, the tree is giving fruit, and the fruit is the Sylvari. They also, which I found out just this morning, there can be Sylvari twins, where two Sylvari are born from one pod.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of have this empathic link more so than other Sylvari would have. I mean, obviously they're all still kind of linked to the Dream of Dreams, but these twins more so.
Flair, you and I had discussed, we didn't know, because we had read that someone said that Sylvari can fall in and out of love.
Yes.
But we didn't know. But you mentioned earlier about someone's lover.
Yes, Cade, the former Destiny's Edge member / main Sylvari you're going to deal with as, if you're playing your personal story as a Sylvari. Faolain, her lover, is also a female Sylvari, which is worth mentioning that the gender doesn't really matter. for Sylvari. Romance.
Or a lesbian couple. Heyo.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they do experience romance and
Shut
love.
up.
Yeah, right. And they do have sex, but what's
Ooh,
interesting.
hello.
But they don't procreate from sex because the only way for Sylvari to be born is from the pale tree.
Right. So it's like, I don't know. They're all sterile, but they're all trying to pollinate each other.
Oh,
You need bees for that.
yeah. I think I read a quote somewhere that said, Sylvari love is about inspiration, but it actually has nothing to do with the physical form of the Sylvari. And it's just interesting that they do, and that's probably a lot of the romance and the sex and the love is probably also influenced from Ronan's love for his wife, that and was imparted from him planting the pale tree. I wonder if it was found by, say, like a Char or a Norn and planted somewhere in one of their areas. Would they have this kind of love for battle, and would be completely different when it comes to that kind of a thing?
Huh. It makes you wonder because the seed was found in a cave where there were multiple seeds.
Which is very interesting, which I did not know.
So if a Norn actually finds that seed eventually and decides to plant it and it grows regardless of how much snow there is on his land, would it be a new playable race eventually in Guild Wars 2? Now I'm intrigued. Like it could be those type of plant people still, but more like oaken, frozen type of tree that you would find in the mountains, like pines and stuff,
Right. Well, first, it would take a very long time
Oh, yeah,
for
you're
one of the
right.
seeds to grow into one of those trees. And actually, this brings up a really good point. What happens, like, say, if we were to plant that now, and in another 250 years, after we've beaten the dragons, will there be Sylvari coming out of a new tree?
Right.
Or will it stop producing them and just wait until the dragons wake up again?
Right, because and this kind of segues, which is a very important point, the Sylvari, the main purpose that they believe that they exist at all is to hunt and defeat the Elder Dragons. That's kind of what the dream tells them, what the Pale Tree tells them, is that is their sole purpose in life, is to help restore order to Tyria and, kind of put the kibosh on the Elder Dragons. Which, if you think about it, 250 years later is where Guild Wars 2 is taking place. The 25 years prior, the first Sylvari Firstborn are born. And as in the events of Guild Wars 2, obviously all of the dragons are awakened, except for maybe Bubbles there under the sea. But they're, as it's gotten closer and more dragons have awoken and become, more active, the number of Sylvari kind of produced have grown exponentially, to the point where Diint and I were having the conversation that at the rate that they're reproducing at being full grown, there's a possibility that they could take over and become the dominant race in Tyria.
That's possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, here, actually, I just had a thought. Because when we were talking, we brought up, well, the dragons have woken up before. And so does that mean there was another pale tree? If
Right.
so, were they Sylvari? What were they? And then we came up with it's entirely speculation. But back when the dragons first woke up, there were no humans, so there were no humanoid Sylvari. However, there were true giants. My theory is that oak hearts are basically the Sylvari of the true giants. Now, see, you ask the question, will they take over and become the predominant race? Well, we don't have any more true giants.
Yeah.
But we do still have oak hearts.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Because they don't die of old age. They just die after battle, at least as far as we know.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like Diint said, it's proven that the elder dragons have woken up before, and kind of did. And people will make the reference that it's like the Reapers from Mass Effect, where they come every 50,000 years or whatever, and they destroy all life to make new life grow. Whatever. I think Guild Wars 2 had this idea before Mass Effect 3. Anyway, so the Elder Dragons did show up before, and at some point they were either defeated or whatever and put back to sleep to the point where now they're waking up now. Now, what we don't know is we don't know if they just got tired of killing things and they ate till they were so full that they just went back to sleep, or if some race or some group of something destroyed them, or at least forced them back into slumber. We get some kind of knowledge from the dwarves that the dwarves were there at that point because they knew about Primordus previously, so the dwarves may have had something to do with it. We know all the true giants are gone. You can kind of see their remains in the Crystal Desert and that kind of stuff. And like Diint said, we do have oak hearts, and there is no real knowledge about why there are oak hearts and why do these plant creatures have kind of sentience and the ability to use magic and things like that. And I mean, we don't know how old oak hearts are. They could have been put there by Melandru, but why would Melandru do that when the gods took the effort to bring the humans to Tyria? Why would they then make creatures that would fight them?
Right.
So our thoughts are, at least Diint and I, and maybe Naveen, that if there was a pale tree seed planted on the grave of a true giant, you would then get a plant-like creature kind of resembling what it was. And if you think about oak hearts, they're giant kind of hulking creatures, and true giants are, as far as we know, giant kind of hulking-like creatures. And I mean, they're giant trees. They would live through the test of time. So,
absolutely.
And I mean, true giants, we're assuming probably weren't very articulate, and writing things down, speaking, which would explain why oak hearts kind of just attack, anything that moves near them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the theories. Another theory that I thought of kind of just now is, maybe they were also some of the things that were meant to guard pale tree seeds, even though you don't really encounter them in the Maguma jungle, which wouldn't really make a lot of sense.
Right.
So, I don't know. I think that's definitely something cool to think about. And like the Sylvari, the new evolution.
And it makes you wonder, did the Sylvari exist prior to the true giants?
It's also true.
Because, I mean, they keep finding seeds all over. Where are those seeds coming from? Like you said, it could be Melandru.
Well, it couldn't be Melandru. Well, if they were, I guess it could have been the pale tree, the most recent pale tree, but if there were Sylvari in the past, it couldn't have been, because the first time the Elder Dragons woke up was prior to the gods even bringing the humans to Tyria.
Right.
But yeah.
So those seeds could be coming from that other place. I guess you could call it, not Earth, but planet. Because originally I say we, but Guild Wars characters are from alien-ish planet.
Yeah, they are aliens to Tyria.
And also, I was thinking before, like, we were thinking about, hey, what would happen if we were to plant other seeds? Would there be a new expansion, a new race playable? And then you mentioned, well, it would probably take like 250 years to grow that tree and then they born. But with new Azuran technology and chart technology, I mean, people can grow tomatoes pretty quick now. So I'm wondering if you could grow a peltrig pretty quick, being 250 years later.
Well, if we're basing this off of chart technology, all we're going to be able to do is blow it up.
So let's go with Azuran.
Well, I've heard this from some other places, so I figure I would kind of mention this too. There's been talks, and even in the game, I noticed in the stress test earlier today, some of these Sylvari they're called like Sylvari Wardens or Warden of Forest or something, which is kind of a title that some of them have taken.
From factions, eh?
Right, and then there's the Etchevald Forest, which is a giant forest that you encounter in factions, and there are wardens in there. So maybe that the wardens down there, they're more, humanoid-esque, the wardens. Maybe they are Sylvari as well, or a different kind of Sylvari, or maybe we'll find more Sylvari in a Canthan expansion.
Now that would be awesome.
That would.
I kind of took some of that information. I got to give a shout out to Wooden Potatoes. Some of that was he kind of came up with some of that stuff. We kind of put a little twist on that whole warden thing there, but he's the one that kind of turned me on to that idea. So I would check out some of his stuff if you get the chance. But,
I'll definitely put a link. Love that guy.
Yeah.
He's the lore master.
Yes, he is.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't even pretend to be close to...
That's why you're the lore guy.
That's why I'm the lore guy, not the lore master.
But yeah, that's a good theory.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's... Again, a lot of... This is all purely speculation. But the whole kind of... I like the idea of, evolution of Sylvari from, giant hulking people to, kind of humanoid things. And if you think about it, the humans in Guild Wars 1, you did amazing things. I mean, you took out, you stopped the Mersat and the Titans, and you took out a god in Nightfall. I mean,
right.
Humans did a lot, so I could, the Pale Tree's got to shape, their fruit, essentially, after a race. Well, this one can take down gods. They could probably take out some dragons, too. Let's pick the humans.
Yeah, that's true.
I think they're putting a lot on our shoulders there. They're giving us more credit than we're worth because Krakatoric is supposed to be so incredibly huge. It is unreal. Now, I don't know how they expect a party of 5 people to kill something that's over 1,000 feet tall.
Well,
that's why it's dynamic.
Spoiler alert. If you guys read Edge of Destiny... Edge of Destiny almost defeated Krakatoric. But
how?
Do you really want me to tell you? Because I will tell you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Naveen?
No.
Okay. Well, then don't. And
I'll tell you the reason they didn't was because one of the members of Destiny's Edge, left and didn't go to the final fight, and that's why they lost.
I know, and you can tell me actually how they do it later after this when Naveen isn't listening in and giving her all the spoilers. But it was a hypothetical how on earth can 5 people destroy something that is
huge?
I can't fathom how big it is.
I mean, even 5 people wouldn't be able to defeat the Shatterer. So...
Right.
true.
Krakatoric would have to just sneeze or just kind of hiccup or something, and he would be gone. He would just be
Goodbye.
Yeah, right. See, what else do we have kind of on the Sylvari before we get too off topic? They don't take last names. They usually are just a one name kind of a creature. Some do take titles, I read. As we said, Fallon is the Grand Duchess of the Nightmare Court.
They have a cycle in which they are born.
Yes,
also.
That's a big thing.
And that makes up their personality, isn't it? Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
yes, and generally reflects what class they play. Not all the time, but most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar, how a human, I was touched by Balthazar, I should probably be a warrior or fire elementalist, but you can be a warrior and worship Grenth. Doesn't really, not exactly dictate, but things kind of make sense. And I don't know if it has much effect storyline wise. Obviously, we don't know because we never played the Sylvari. But...
Well, I know that there are 4 cycles. There's cycle dawn, noon, dusk, and night. I would have to look up the time of which, because depending on what time they're born, well, I wouldn't say born because they're not born. They are awakened. They have 4 cycles, and each cycle has a luminary. I'm not sure what a luminary does. I could look it up, but I know that they have luminaries. I guess it would be sort of like a leader of that cycle.
Yes, it's the firstborn that was born in that cycle.
Ah, well, there
Okay.
you go. And since it's 25 years in the making, they're not old enough that they died yet, so
Right.
Well,
they're still
it
there.
could be 250 years in the making, and they probably still wouldn't.
Yeah, I
because
mean,
they
how
don't
long can a tree
age.
live?
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, the pale tree's been alive for 250 years. So.
Yeah, there you go. And it's still healthy as far as I know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here in about a couple months, that pale tree is going to get busy making some Sylvari. It's going to get real busy. It's just going to be a huge flux of hundreds and thousands of new Sylvari all at once.
And I know some people will say, I don't want to really play a Sylvari. They're not all that cool. They look too elfish. I'm more into the humanoid, not humanoid, but human side and char and rar. And Sylvari looks so fragile and everything. But knowing all of their story and their lore, this is what makes you want to play a Sylvari. This is want to make you. It makes you want to get involved with their story. And oh my God, are we gonna really destroy the dragons? Are we gonna play a huge part of the story? If so, hell, I want to be a Sylvari. I want to be in
Right.
that.
And see, the thing that's like I'm stoked for is that it's been confirmed that because you know how like the human starting area is like that big centaur battle, and then you fight that weird hand elemental thingy, and the char you fight the ghost, or the statue rather.
Yeah.
But it's been confirmed that this Sylvari starting area is the Dream of Dreams. So you kind of like experience you being born.
Oh, what? Now
That
I
was
do
a-
want to create one
Yeah,
right off
and
the
that
bat.
that's out of the mouth of Rhys Osbeis. That is a confirmed from the lore creator, master, continuity person from ArenaNet. So another thing, if you're on the fence about Sylvari, if you are any kind of fan of Arthurian legend, as in King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and that whole thing, end of last year, there was an interview with one of the devs at the Eurogamer kind of conference over in England, I believe. And he confirmed that the Sylvari kind of story, I watched a video on it, it's kind of based in Arthurian legend. Like their personal story and kind of the stuff you're going to deal with, your little intro stuff in the starting area and that kind of stuff is based in and, you know, strongly tied to Arthurian legend. So,
Really?
I mean, I'm a huge history buff, King Arthur, you know, Sword in the Stone kind of thing. So that is something to look forward to that might sway your opinion on the Sylvari.
Right.
Which I find is interesting because their name and the naming convention that they use for them and the whole where they kind of came from is heavily Celtic influenced, but they're saying that their story is, you know, Arthurian, which is core British English. So just interesting. But yeah, I mean, that made me all for it. Oh, and I also heard for all of you support team players out there that Sylvari are going to have more, at least it was confirmed, but I can't remember how long ago it was, that their race, that them as a race are going to have more healing-based magic and skills, racial skills, than any other race. And I mean, there's other cool things, like they get there's the Fern Hound, Fern Wolf, which is in the Sylvari starting area. If you're going to play a ranger, you get the wolf that's made out of a tree, basically. You know, it's a plant. You know, I think like I said, it's the Fern Hound. And you know, when you play as a ranger in any of the various races, you get to pick from one of 3 different pets as your starting pet, and one of theirs is this Fern Hound, which is, you know, I mean, other races can charm it, but it's exclusive, I think, to the Sylvari area. And you know, it's kind of the Sylvari treat the Fern Hounds as humans treat a dog.
Right.
So that's something that's neat. That's kind of not Sylvari, you know, exclusive, but you know, I mean, you're gonna find them in the Sylvari starting area. So
And they look pretty cool too. They're
Yeah.
really colorful,
Yeah.
and they look more like wolves than they do a dog, if that makes any sense. They look ferocious, but they are pretty to look at. So,
Yeah.
for you, Dint, who likes aesthetics, kind of the side of the game, you will love that, I'm sure, if you play
Oh,
a ranger.
absolutely.
And for you rangers out there, real quick, their unique pet ability that all pets have. They're kind of grouped into the different categories, and all pets kind of have like their one. You get your, I think it's F1, 2, 3 skills, and their unique ability, which every pet has a unique ability. Theirs is a howl that grants regeneration to nearby allies. So again, you want to play the Sylvari support ranger, you got the Fernhound with regenerate, you got your healing skills. I mean, you're set to go, and you look pretty.
Yeah,
So,
and you
I
look
mean, what
pretty.
more could you ask for?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm thinking we should start to wrap it up.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm thinking we're pretty much out of kind of lore and things that I can think of. I mean, there may be some other stuff. If you are interested in sending us some fan mail and you have any questions, or you don't like what we said or how we pronounce some of the names or whatever.
Except I don't count because I'm French.
Yeah, you don't count her. She's French. But send us some fan mail, your questions, and maybe, hopefully, between the three of us, we can kind of give you an answer, or at least maybe point you in the right direction, maybe where to look, that kind of stuff.
And if you have, I'm sorry, Flair.
No, go ahead.
If you guys have a community, Guild Wars 2 community that's about the Guild Wars 2 lore and the PvE Guild Wars 2, basically, you can always email us, and we will have eventually guests on the show. So if you want us to give you a shout out or be a potential guest, you can email us. And the emails are going to be on our website, which is CoTPodcast.com. But you can also use hosts, that's plural, at chroniclesoftyria.com.
Yeah. But before we get off here, let's talk about our current contest going on, just real quick.
Yeah, good idea.
We currently have a contest for our logo. So we need you guys to design a logo and 2 banners. And you'll find all the details on our forums, which is cotforums.com. And the only thing you have to do is sign up for a membership on the forums and look at the rules, and you're good to go. Just create and be part of it. Pretty cool prizes too. I mean, you get to be the designer of our new logo. So
Great.
Fame for you.
And I mean, if you join our forums, which you'll have to do anyway to enter the contest, you get a custom forum title.
Yep.
If we're planning on, at least at some point down the road, kind of doing a merchandise kind of a thing. And I mean, your logo will be featured on that. So I mean, how much more prestigious can you get? I mean, really. And another thing we kind of mentioned about guest hosts, if you write a story, we talked about possibly bringing people on to kind of talk about their personal stories, and maybe even doing like a guest kind of reading of one of their stories. So if you would like to be one of our kind of guest hosts or guests on the show, head over to chroniclesoftyria.com, hit up the forums, check out what we got there, look, write your own personal story, and you could be chosen to come on here live with us in one of our future episodes.
Yep. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Because that's what we're all about, the Guild Wars 2 community.
Yes, and I'm telling you, I have loved it so far. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on air and I am trying to plug our website, but honestly, I wouldn't have been so active and have posted. Well, what was my post count? I think it was like 102 days on the forum.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you were a little nuts. But nobody. Yeah, that's not like not everybody's gonna be like that.
No.
And I guess we should also mention that we are a guild in Guild Wars 2. We also are a guild in Guild Wars 1.
Yep.
So that's something worth checking out.
If you want to join.
yeah, we can shoot you an invite in game. And if we are probably not for the next couple of days because we'll have too much, kind of pining for not being able to play Guild Wars 2 since the stress test. But we are fairly active in Guild Wars 1, so if you're looking to kind of get some help, maybe, rack up those Hollow Monument points before Guild Wars 2 comes out, we're also pretty good for that. So you can always, PM us in game.
Yep.
Absolutely.
More than welcome.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for listening to our show. I mean, it's our first ever show, and like Flair said, you can always send us an email and tell us, give us comments and tell us what you'd like to hear from the lore.
Yeah, or from, any other kind of stuff. I mean, we're not really focused on PvP. I know some of our members kind of do that, but that's not really our thing. An actual, game like release and new stuff we may touch on a little bit, but it can't hurt to send us an email. The least we can say is, we'll attempt to answer, every email that we get. I mean, right now we have 0, so we're really good at that so far. We're batting 1,000. But, and another thing, I mean, if anybody actually managed to make it through this long on this podcast, this is our first episode. Like, we'll probably get the hang of this as a couple episodes go on, and we won't have so much kind of, interrupting each other and, kind of babbling on, going off on tangents. I mean, or we might be even worse. I can't promise you one way or another. But, right,
I hope we don't get worse.
Yeah, I mean, cut us a break, guys. It's episode number 1. I don't know what our time frame is. I'm assuming we try to keep it under an hour if possible. Mm-hmm. But, maybe even a half an hour. That's probably too short. But,
Right. Hopefully all the technical difficulties I was experiencing throughout the recording is not as obvious
on that either. Because we tried to keep him kind of flawlessly, except for that point where Naveen was like, "Can you invite Diint back?" All right. We're gonna keep dragging on. So
yeah, okay.
Let's bring
So
this
sign off.
So for Chronicles of Tyria podcast, I am Flair.
I'm Diint.
And I'm Naveen.
And we will see you next week.